Good afternoon and welcome to the University of Northern Iowa. My name is Maddie Brower and I'm the Vice President of Alumni Outreach and Connecting Alumni to Students. I'd like to start off by thanking President and Mrs. Nook, Provost Herrera, Vice President of Advancement Jeremiah, Dean of the Wilson College of Business, Leslie Wilson, Dean of Students, Allison Raffanello, the Vice President of the Alumni Association, Brian Gable, and other campus administrator and faculty members for spending the afternoon with us celebrating these three outstanding young alumni. Thank you to all of our attendees for joining us and recognizing these Panthers for their achievements and leadership. The Gold and Bold Award honors graduates of the last decade or Gold graduates who have boldly made exceptional educational, career, or personal achievements since their graduation from UNI. It is a privilege to be here this afternoon with all of you as we celebrate these Panthers in the third year of this program. Through our volunteerism in CATS, we meet many alumni who demonstrate a commitment to service, innovation, their communities, and this university. Our three honorees today are in a class of all their own. They have distinguished themselves from their peers and lead future change for future generations. UNI alumni have a profound impact on their communities, the state of Iowa, and far beyond. These three alums are the remarkable example for current and prospective students and encourage alumni and professionals at every level to continue working to make a difference. We are so proud of their work. We are so honored to celebrate them today, and we are so proud that they are Panthers. At this time, I would like to invite President Mark Nook up to the stage.
Well, thank you and welcome to the Gold and Bold ceremony, reception and ceremony. This is a remarkable opportunity for us, and it's one that I'm so proud this university takes advantage of. Young alumni at every campus go out and do great things, but to take a little time to step back and celebrate them and honor the work that they've done and recognize the work that this university did to prepare them for their careers is what this ceremony is all about. So thankful for the CATS organization and recognizing the opportunity that we have with young alumni and keeping them connected to this university through such a program. So I look at our three awardees. I've worked closely with two of them. One of them, in fact, was my tour guide when I came here for an interview. So I've connected with two of the three very well and look forward to getting to know the third a lot better as we meet each other more and more over the next couple of, actually maybe even couple months, it turns out. But as I look at the three individuals and you read what they've done, they certainly are very, very deserving of this award. And I want to congratulate each of you on your achievements and on your award here today. But really, it's an acknowledgement of the things that you've done to really grow the Purple Circle, the influence that UNI has because of the work that you've done professionally and the networks that you've built as a young professional. So thank you for what you do for the university by the way that you have handled yourself professionally and in your personal lives. It means a lot to us as a university. It's a privilege to be on this stage and say thank you for what you've done, the way that you've honored this institution, and the way that what that means to all of us here, and the commitment that the faculty and staff have made to your success. So thank you for the role that you have played and for the way that you have brought great honor to our institution. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Nook. Next, please allow me to introduce Kylie Meyer, who is in her second semester of Connecting Alumni to Students. She will assist in recognizing our recipients.
Thank you, Maddie. On behalf of Connecting Alumni to Students and the UNI Alumni Association, I am so excited to share this year's honorees with you today. Each of the three awardees will be recognized individually and asked to share their Panther story and their advice for current and former students. Each address will be recorded for future viewing. We hope their messages inspire a new generation of Panther leaders, change makers, entrepreneurs, and innovators. After all three have been recognized, we will have a short Q&A session. If you have questions for the honorees, please submit them electronically using the QR code throughout the presentation. Our first Golden Bold Award recipient is a 2014 graduate of the History and Political Communication programs and a 2016 graduate of the History Master's program. He is currently employed by the Iowa Senate as a legislative analyst. His role requires him to provide detailed policy analysis for senators. He has staffed an impressive number of 161 bills that have earned the governor's signature and become law. He has volunteered for the past several years to serve as the leader for the Iowa Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership, or HOBie, seminar. During this recipient's time at UNI, he was involved in a variety of student organizations, including the Varsity Men's Glee Club and Student Admissions Ambassadors. He was driven to involve himself on campus because of his love for the UNI community. He remains involved with UNI even after graduating by serving as a member of the UNI Alumni Association Board and as a vice chair of the College of Social Behavioral Sciences Advisory Board. He is also a member of the Central Iowa Alumni Club and has a silver kingpin in the Glee Club. In 2021, he was honored by the Varsity Men's Glee Club by receiving the Outstanding Young Alumni Award. He was also named to 5 Under 35 by UNI Stat in 2017. Please join me in congratulating Dylan Keller.
Thank you. All right, there we are. Well, good afternoon. My name is Dylan Keller, and I graduated from UNI in 2014 with a bachelor's in history and political communication, a politics and law minor, and a certificate in public history. I stuck around and got my master's in history in the fall of 2016. I am a legislative analyst for the Iowa Senate Republican Caucus, where my primary role is to provide detailed policy analysis of complex legislation. I currently staff the Health and Human Services Committee and the Appropriation Committee, which oversees the state's $9 billion budget. During my 6 years as a student and 8 years following, I have been an active member of the Panther family. I currently serve on the UNI Alumni Board and Executive Council as the Vice Chair of the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences Dean's Advisory Board and the Central Iowa Alumni Club. Yes, being this involved may show that I have a problem with saying no to certain commitments. That realization and discussion can be held at another time, but my involvement with our university stems from my UNI story. I was born and raised in Donaldson, Iowa, in Lee County, or also known as Iowa's Little Florida. When it came time for college searches, I was adamant that I would attend an East Coast school and move out of the state. But out-of-state education is expensive. So I changed my assumptions and looked at our in-state options. I was encouraged by a former high school teacher to look at UNI. He said there is no downside to visiting a college campus. It's not like you're automatically committing when you go on a visit. So I took that first step and scheduled a campus tour. The feelings from when I first stepped on campus still resonate with me each time I return. Key highlights were the design of our campus by having all academic buildings within minutes of each other and not relying on a bus, our class sizes being 20 to 30 students, and the fall foliage. After that visit, I knew there was only one option and applied to become a Panther. Now, a quick side story. I am the middle child of 3. I have an older sister and a younger sister. Neither of our parents earned a 4-year degree, so we are first-generation students. My older sister is a year older, and she attended a liberal arts college in St. Louis area at this time. During my summer orientation in June of 2010, she joined my mom for the parent side of the program. After I registered for classes and signed up for clubs, my mom informed me that she is considering transferring into UNI. Let me remind you, she had her college search process in 2009. 2010 was my year, and here she comes transferring into my school. She completed her paperwork and applied for housing that day. I was assigned to the second floor of Norrin Hall, and do you know which residence hall she was assigned to? Over 6 months after I applied for housing, she was assigned to Norrin Hall and on the second floor. My sister was 3 doors away from my dorm room. With all that occurring, it was great to have the Panther spirit double in our family. My time on campus was filled with student organizations, including Northern Iowa Student Government, History Club and Phi Alpha Theta Honor Society, UNI College Republicans, Student Admissions Ambassadors, the inaugural group of SABRs, Social and Behavioral Representatives, and the UNI Varsity Men's Glee Club. The Glee Club was the most impactful group to my experience at UNI. This group allowed me to continue my passion for singing and to travel abroad for the first time. We sang in Germany, Austria, and Spain, including in historical cathedrals, at the Dachau Jewish concentration camp, on the walls of castles, and from the hillside of the Alps. I even continued my tap dancing skills by performing at the Christmas variety show each of my 4 years as an undergrad. On the professional side, my involvement with the UNI College Republicans allowed me to build a network to help me land my current position at the Iowa Senate. As a leader in UNICRs, I was active on campus by volunteering during the 2012 and 2014 election cycles, where I helped with get out the vote efforts in Cedar Falls and Waterloo, and engaged with fellow students on campus. We hosted many elected officials to discuss policies affecting college students and to practice our advocacy skills. These on-campus opportunities led to real-world engagement during UNI Day at the state capitol, and when I studied for a semester at the Washington Center in Washington, D.C. My experience at the Washington Center included an internship with the Bipartisan Policy Center in its communications department and taking a class hosted by C-SPAN. During the end of my graduate school studies, I was offered the role of field director overseeing 4 Iowa State Senate campaigns in Northeast Iowa. This position allowed me to get paid for working in politics while I finished researching and writing my master's thesis. Another quick side story. During the spring of 2016, the Alumni Association ended its alumni model of paid membership dues. I, of course, signed up to be a lifetime member as a way to give a gift and then not be contacted again, which thankfully hasn't gone to plan. The Alumni Association offered to convert our monetary gift into a brick as part of the new Alumni Plaza south of the Campanile. I agreed to sign up for the brick, which could be customized the inscription. I optimistically submitted BA 2014, MA 2016 to be inscribed under my name. Since I finished my coursework in the spring of 2016, that meant I needed to finish researching and drafting my thesis by the fall 2016 graduation deadline. I would not advise having to draft a thesis paper while working a campaign job that required voter engagement every day. With determination and support from my advisors, I managed to complete my thesis and defend it days before Election Day in 2016. To say that was a stressful moment would be an understatement. But to this day, I credit that brick for keeping me focused because I could not live with myself for having the wrong graduation year be left to history. Now, following Election Day, the Iowa Senate Republicans flipped the chamber and took control of the majority for the first time in 20 years. I also had the honor of participating as one of Iowa's 6 presidential electors following the 2016 election. At that time, I was one of 409 Iowa electors since 1848 to hold this historic role. Following these significant accomplishments, I took the position of Executive Secretary to the Senate Majority Leader in 2017. From there, I went back to the campaign side for the 2018 election cycle as the Director of Fundraising for the Senate Majority Fund. In this role, I helped raise over $3.8 million to support our state Senate races. Following another round of electoral success, I applied and received my current position as a legislative analyst. As part of my job, I am responsible for assisting Iowa Senate Republicans advance their goals and policies. To date, I staffed 161 policies and budget bills that earned the signature of Governor Kim Reynolds. Some of the key policies include redistricting in 2021, the redrawing of Iowa's congressional and state legislative district maps, election law reforms, occupational licensing reforms, implementing sports wagering, alcohol reforms, the creation of Iowa Health and Human Services Department, and restructuring and development of the new behavioral health services system. Just recently, Iowa voters supported 2 amendments to the Iowa State Constitution, both of which I helped draft and staff during the 2022 legislative session. I credit my time in education at UNI to the successes I've had in my young professional life. This can be attributed to the foundation I gained at UNI, In CSBS, there are many career paths that one can take with one of our majors due to what I believe are 3 key skills built into our curriculum: critical thinking, critical reading, and critical writing. These skills are applicable in many fields where technical or procedural knowledge can be taught on the job. Without this foundation, I would not have been able to apply myself in the different professional roles I've held. The memories you make during your time as part of this community will have a lasting impact. I challenge you to be involved in areas where you are passionate. Engage with people who have a different view or mindset that may be uncomfortable or unfamiliar to you. Be your own ambassador and seek out new experiences and networks that will be beneficial to your own goals. Also, find someone or something to hold yourself accountable to those goals. It could be as simple as a break. Lastly, be proud that you are a UNI Panther and proudly wear your purple and gold. I like to say when you see someone wearing UNI branded clothes, it is an authentic connection to the university. That individual is most likely a student, an alum, a professor, a member of staff, or know someone that attended UNI. Good luck finding that connection from someone who is wearing a different school's color in this state. I want to thank Diane Campbell for nominating me for the Golden Bold Award. I'd like to extend my gratitude to my family for their consistent support, my professors and UNI associates who continue to engage with me following graduation, and thank you to the Alumni Association and CATS for hosting us on campus. Thank you for your time and attendance this afternoon.
Thank you, Dylan, for sharing your story, and congratulations. My name is Sydney Singh. I'm a first-year member of Connecting Alumni to Students. It is my pleasure to introduce our next honoree. Our next honoree is a 2016 UNI criminology graduate and Washington School of Law alum. During her time at UNI, she was an athlete on UNI's track and field team. She continues to stay connected to UNI by sharing her knowledge and experience with senior criminology students in the senior seminar course. In addition, this recipient is happy to help mentor students who are interested in continuing their education after their time at UNI. Recently, UNI Athletics was able to interview this recipient for the celebration of Black History Month. After she completed her time at UNI and continued to the Washington School of Law in St. Louis, Missouri, she served as the Vice President of the Student Bar Association and was awarded the Jack Garden Humanitarian Award. Today, this recipient spends most of her time in Washington, D.C., where she is the Deputy Director of United States Legislation at the Future Privacy Forum. This role includes the analysis of legislation, regulatory and legal developments regarding data privacy, artificial intelligence, and facial recognition. This recipient provides expert testimony in legislative hearings regarding the protection of civil and privacy rights. Likewise, she seeks the fostering of innovation and ensures the possible use of emerging technologies. This recipient is a role model for students who are eager to make their impact in the criminal justice field and are looking to pursue further education in law. Please join me in congratulating Tatiana Rice.
Good afternoon, University of Northern Iowa. My name is Tatiana Rice, and standing here today, I genuinely can't put into words how surreal it feels to be back here accepting this distinguished award. I'm truly honored and humbled. Since graduating from UNI in 2016, I've had a bit of a whirlwind journey. I attended a top law school, I clerked for a federal judge, I spent a semester at the Department of Justice in DC, where I attended Supreme Court oral arguments, and I represented major Fortune 500 companies as a practicing attorney in Washington, DC. Now, I'm proud to serve as the Deputy Director of Legislation at a leading technology think tank where I've testified in legislative hearings, I met with senior advisors from the White House, the Federal Trade Commission, and members of Congress, and I regularly engage with dozens of state senators and representatives, witnessing firsthand how my work leads to real change in laws and policies that impact our society. But I share this not to list my list of accomplishments, but to emphasize that it hasn't always been this way. And if there's one takeaway that I want to leave you all with, it's that you are far more capable than what you realize. I remember sitting at UNI freshman orientation back in 2012, listening to somebody talk about how they had this White House internship experience. And I remember being in awe of them and looking up and saying, wow, they are so impressive. That could never be me. Like many of you, I came from a rural and working class Midwest background. I wasn't valedictorian of my high school class. I didn't have an outstanding ACT or LSAT, and I didn't really know any lawyers or doctors. To be honest, I didn't even think to dream that big, let alone to think I could reach where I'm at today. What I've learned is that it's not about where you start or even about who you know, but it's about showing up, doing the work, taking risks, and saying yes to opportunities that move you forward. And that is something I was able to lean into at UNI. For the faculty and staff here, know that your role supporting students, pushing them, and expanding their vision of what's possible is more life-altering than what you know. I truly don't know if I would be here today if it weren't for professors like Dr. Reinberger-Dunn, Professor Peters, and Dr. Crew, who is no longer with us, but whose influence still I carry deeply in my heart. You remind us that the world is so much bigger than what we might think. So to every student, teacher, and administrator here, I urge you to lean into that sense of possibility. So on to the fun part, which is what do I actually do? In fact, my family, I don't think even knows what I really do, to be honest. So I work at a think tank, which basically means that I get paid to sit around thinking and researching and writing and then advising people about what I sit and think about and research and write, largely focusing on issues related to data privacy and ethical artificial intelligence. And I'm going to explain a little bit of what that is and like how UNI was able to shape me in pursuing this type of career. And while this may seem really technical or distant, I do want to emphasize how these kind of impact us and how they shape our future of society. So let me start with this quote by Edward Snowden, the whistleblower and privacy advocate. Privacy matters because privacy is what allows us to determine who we are and who we want to be. Privacy can also be considered the right to be left alone because at its core, privacy is about our right to control ourselves and our lives and have autonomy. It's fundamental to a free society, allowing us to think, speak, and act without fear of intrusion. So for example, in 2013, I don't know if you all remember this, but Edward Snowden revealed the extent of our online monitoring activities by the government and by private entities. And researchers found that there was actually a notable decrease in the amount of online discourse and searches around sensitive topics, showcasing how people's fear of being watched undermines our ability to engage in free speech and maintain a thriving democracy. So technology has become increasingly embedded in our lives, from checking the weather to using GPS and social media and tracking our fitness even, making our lives fundamentally better. And artificial intelligence offers the potential to advance society in really significant and meaningful ways through applications like early cancer detection and post-disaster aid. Yet this intertwining raises important questions about our privacy, security, and our sense of autonomy that I'm really excited to be working on in my work currently with legislators and policymakers. And if you've ever talked about a product within earshot of your phone or your Alexa device just to see that it shows up in your targeted advertising, you know what I'm talking about. So we don't always think about it, but the data that we generate daily has significant value. Our data is constantly being collected, analyzed, and used to influence decisions, often without us realizing it. So in my current role, I work with policymakers across the political spectrum to address these issues, which often requires balancing tough, personal, and competing issues and priorities and viewpoints that have real-world consequences. So for example, AI-powered algorithms often rely on vast amount of personal data and historical data to train these systems. And these systems are often used to make decisions in areas traditionally protected by existing civil rights law, like employment, lending, or criminal justice. And while these systems are designed to be impartial, they can unintentionally replicate biases from the data that they're trained on, leading to unfair and discriminatory outcomes for protected classes and marginalized communities. In other situations, though, the data collection practices might actually be impacting you individually, and those are things that policymakers really care about, especially on the state and local level. So I'm gonna do a little exercise just to make this a little bit more concrete for folks. So who here has a car? Great, yeah, we're in the Midwest, that makes sense. How many would you say these are connected vehicles, which means that they are able to connect to apps or your phone? Yep. So why does this matter? Why am I telling you this? Because the data about you and your behavior is actually often shared and sold without your knowledge, and it's extensive, and it could actually be impacting you in ways that you don't even realize. So this is the amount of data that's oftentimes collected. This is the kind of work that I work on at the Future Privacy Forum, where we kind of try to monitor how data moves through our society and impacts us in different ways. But in one investigation, we find that it is often sold and shared without our knowledge. So in one investigation, a guy who just owned a Chevy EV found out that his insurance rate increased by 21% because his driving data was being shared with his insurer without consent or knowledge. In another example, has anybody here heard of Strava? Yeah, okay. So it's the app that's used to track running routes and progress. And a few years ago, Strava released a global heat map showing literally all activity from every one of its users, including 3 trillion GPS points. Where is this going? This map unintentionally revealed the locations of secret US military bases because of that heat map and how people were using the app, putting our military personnel and military strategy at risk. So we and policymakers see the stakes for data privacy are really high. And in these examples, you see how these issues cross political divides from civil rights to consumer protection to national security. So policy must be developed thoughtfully with input and perspectives from all stakeholders and perspectives. So in my role working with policymakers, my job isn't to push one agenda, it's to provide the facts, evidence, legal analysis, and insights they need to make informed, balanced decisions. It's about helping them navigate competing views, build consensus, and find middle ground. And sometimes that means standing in uncomfortable spaces with conflicting viewpoints colliding. But those moments of discomfort often lead to the greatest progress. So this is where UNI comes in. I'll admit, I am very good at my job, but I'm good at it because these are skills that I developed here at UNI. I was, as Dylan mentioned, the ability to think critically and write critically and engage with different perspectives are all different skills that I was able to hone in at UNI. As a mixed race student at UNI, I was also a student athlete on the track team. I was competitive in speech and debate. I was involved in student government. I was in the Black Student Association and pre-law program. I started in biochemistry and criminology, and I did history. And so like a lot of different people, I was managing a lot of different identities and trying to figure out who I was. But it was at UNI where I could explore those interests and identities without having to fit into a particular mold. At a smaller, close-knit school like UNI, there's room for flexibility and growth, and professors and mentors get to know you personally and encourage you to grow. My professors pushed me to think critically about how society, governance, and how we can solve the problems that we face. And thanks to their mentorship, I'm able to now navigate the challenges of my career and pursue solutions that matter and impact us all. And as we all know, we're living in a time when political divides can feel insurmountable. But one of the most valuable lessons I learned at UNI is that engaging with people from different perspectives does not mean compromising your principles. It means listening, truly listening, with empathy and an open mind. It means challenging your own beliefs and thinking critically about the world around you. This skill is essential in my work, where building consensus and advancing policy in a polarized environment is key. And these are the same skills that will help each and every one of you chart your own paths, no matter where they lead. So to every Panther in here, never underestimate the skills you're learning now and support systems around you. The world needs thoughtful, informed leaders who can listen, engage, and bridge divides. You have the power and potential to make a difference, just as you are right now. So thanks for having me back here today, and for everybody here that's impacted my life and everything you've taught me around the way. Go Panthers.
Thank you, Tatiana, for sharing your story with the audience this afternoon. So my name is Michael Fish, and this will be my third semester with Connecting Alumni to Students. Before I continue, I would again like to remind all students in attendance that attending a guest speaker or lecturer is included in our Traditions Challenge, so do not forget to take the picture before you leave tonight. And our final Golden Bowl Award recipient is a 2018 UNI Business Management and Marketing UNI grad. He's employed by Procter & Gamble, where he serves as the HR Director for Global Research and Development and the Global Equity and Inclusion Leader for Gillette. He leads diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts across the global Procter & Gamble organization to deliver representation goals. He works to build an inclusive organization where all talent is valued, included, and empowered to be their full, authentic selves. He is also a strategic business partner to senior leadership, providing coaching on organizational design, culture, capability, and internal communications. This alum has achieved several outstanding awards to recognize his exceptional leadership within the organization, one being the BOLT Award, or the Bold Outstanding Leaders of Tomorrow, is a program that recognizes only 10% of global Gillette employees for delivering breakthrough results and being identified as top talent within their organization. He's also been a recipient of the CEO Award at P&G that recognizes only 3% of the global organization for their exceptional contributions to deliver growth and value creation for the company. He has stayed connected to UNI after graduation by serving on the Alumni Association Board of Managers, which is an advisory board that supports alumni engagement within the institution. He also invests in the next generation of students by returning as a speaker for workshops and panels and serves as an ongoing mentor for many students across the university. He has intentionally invested in his time to impact and improve the lives around him, both in his day-to-day work and in his involvement in the community. Please join me in congratulating Jamal White.
All right. How's everyone doing? Good. Okay, so I fully got up here prepared to say they saved the best for last, but I was quickly put in my place by Dylan and Tatiana with your amazing speeches. You really did a stellar job, and I think you'll notice consistencies across many of our topics that we're talking. One, Dylan, we've actually, which I'll speak to, had a similar coming into UNI and how we came about, and Tatiana talking about identity and finding yourself, I think was huge. When I first received the prompts for today, I said to myself, what the heck am I going to talk about for 10 minutes that would be anything worthwhile for these folks? And then as I actually started to get into it and prepare my thoughts, which by the way would have been this morning at 6 a.m. on my multiple flights over, I caught myself saying, how the heck am I going to keep this to only 10 minutes? Shout out to last minute preparation. We all know that way too well. But I'm going to do my best and try not to bore you along the way. What I plan to do over the next several minutes is quickly walk you through the stages of my life that got me here, with the goal to articulate a story about opportunities, a little faith, some hard work, and a lot of gratitude. And a hope that you walk away with a glimpse of who I am, what I value, and what has contributed to my success. And then I just have a bunch of random assortment of pictures that I had to dig up from the grave to illustrate my time at UNI and beyond along the way. So let's get into it. I'm going to start by providing you a little context of my time before UNI. And you'll see some of those pictures, and I thought it was important to include some childhood pictures for dramatic effect. I had quite the interesting upbringing. Born in Chicago, Illinois, among a large family of 11, 8 siblings, 2 parents. One of them actually in the crowd, Javaria, who will be an alumni here soon. Shout out to you, super proud. I lived the younger years of my life in Illinois, surrounded by a sea of people who looked like me, who behaved as I did, and who came from similar backgrounds as I did, whether that be socioeconomic status, little to no educated households, etc. While diverse in some regard, I didn't know at the time, but I existed in a box. That, of course, was until my life was uplifted and turned around as my parents decided to move us to a small town called Truro, Iowa. Anyone know of Truro, Iowa? A couple people, okay. At a very formative stage of my life. And believe it or not, though Iowa borders Illinois, I knew nothing about Iowa. And honestly, at the time of us moving, again, I was at a young age, so forgive me, I was convinced that this was where witchcraft and sorcery took place. I told y'all it was a fascinating time. Anyway, we moved to Iowa to a polar opposite environment from where I started my life journey. I settled in at a small school called Interstate 35, which I learned I have another Interstate 35 alum here today, with a class size of around 50 to 60, majority Caucasian, white, and families whom had been there for generations. I was now in a place where there were little to no people that looked like me outside of my family, and I was feeling what it was like to be the only one. In the beginning, it was really difficult to find my footing. I hadn't quite come into my identity yet, so I had to conform to the environment around me with hopes that I would fit in, many times feeling like an alien when I was away from my family. Thank God there was a lot of us. I eventually found my connections through sports. First wrestling, woo, I know you probably wouldn't believe it, and football and track, and then eventually found my love for basketball. Through sports, I finally built my confidence up and started to get involved in academic activities such as student council, National Honor Society, etc. And somehow found my way to student class president. I felt like that was a little bit of foreshadowing. This is where I started to feel the shift. With time, I came to the conclusion that I was not going to be a professional basketball player or like MJ. I had to give up on that dream. So I started to focus my efforts on academics. As I applied to universities, I just knew I wanted to get out of Iowa. That me and my true personality, though I really didn't know what that was yet, weren't a fit here. So I applied to the University of Kansas because I was a huge Jayhawks basketball fan at the time. I even as much as accepted my admittance. I was set to go there until I realized I wouldn't be able to afford it without Parent Plus loans that my parents couldn't afford, and that I certainly wouldn't be able to manage. At the time, I was stuck. I remembered back to someone I had interned for the summer before my junior year in accounting department for Warren County, raving about their collegiate experience at this school called the University of Northern Iowa. She said it had a good business program or something. Though I knew nothing about it at the time, I took a leap. It was the only school in Iowa that I applied for, and I was accepted. Between scholarships and financial aid, I was awarded enough money to cover the cost of tuition and can manage fees and room and board through some subsidized loans and a part-time job. The thought of a lot of debt was terrifying to me, so how could I turn that down? I accepted before even visiting campus. I eventually got here sometime April, May, before the school classes would have started in August. And yes, I had my wow moment with the dome, as many of you probably have. So I started my journey at UNI. I remember enjoying orientation and telling myself I wanted to be like one of those leaders one day because they made me feel welcome and a part of the Panther family. But the start to my freshman year wasn't all sunshine, rainbows, or a sail in the park. I actually struggled quite a bit my freshman year because I was still stuck in this identity crisis of who I was and who I wanted to be. I was prepared to transfer. I'm sure many of you in this room can relate to that as you started your own college experience. It can be daunting starting over in a new place where you know very little people, you have very little connections, and you have to restart again. I eventually started to make connections in residence life, and I was convinced to run for Dancer Hall Senate President. Dancer Hall was where I lived my first year in the Towers, honestly because it was the only dorm that was available at the time that I booked for housing. And by some odd chance, I won. Through that first experience, my time at UNI was taking a turn, and I was beginning on an adventure that I could have never expected. It unlocked a passion for leadership and people that I never knew I had. I was then encouraged to become a resident assistant because someone thought I would be good at it. I was fortunate to be offered a position in Campbell Hall. Any one of the students lived in Campbell Hall? Yes, Campbell fam. And I still have my offer letter to this day. It was perfect because it also helped me cover my room and board and took away a mighty financial burden that was causing me a lot of stress and anxiety, allowing me the ability to focus on what mattered, which was my involvement, my leadership, and my academics. I spent 2 years as an RA in Campbell. I worked as a summer conference assistant in Panther Village in Norrin. I had finally achieved my first dream of becoming an orientation leader after my sophomore year, hoping to create that same experience for someone else that was created for me. One of the best summers ever. If you hadn't caught on to the theme here, I went from almost wanting to transfer to almost never leaving campus after I returned my second semester of my freshman year. It had finally felt like home. I extended my involvement in my major with leadership roles in the American Marketing Association. I joined Connecting Alumni to Students and became a student admissions ambassador. I was a very active Panther sports fan. You can see me at Circle with my mouth wide open. One of the best games, if you weren't around to attend, we upset UNC at the game, which was huge. Helped to build new student organizations such as Business Student Ambassadors, and extended my involvement wherever I could and felt a personal passion for. Studying abroad in Italy and Spain for a capstone unlocked a new world for me, and I was really curating one of the best experiences of my life. But wait, things got better. This continued with the wild ride of running for student body president and winning. That would be a whole separate story if you want us to come around to hear about that. Spending spring break in Shanghai, China with the President's Council of the College of Business, and joining Team TCTK, which, by the way, I kept the secret very well. I don't even think President Nook knew. And all that lifted it up because of the strong support of my most constant community and backbone, Black Student Union. It was the culmination of these experiences that got me ready for business and prepared me to take over whatever was next in my life and whatever was to come. My junior year, you know, where you hit that point where it's like, okay, I finally need to figure out what the heck I'm gonna do with the rest of my life. After I spent all my summers on campus, I had to come to a decision about where I wanted to go next. I needed to decide if I wanted to follow higher education, as a lot of my mentors and advisors were encouraging me to go that route, go get your master's in higher ed, this is what you've been doing, you'd be great at it. But there was a certain part of me that also wanted to entertain my major and what I was studying, and I thought, from my moment of coming into the University of Northern Iowa, I just knew I wanted to work in business. So I needed to at least explore that option. I was fortunate enough to stumble across P&G HR, where the job description shared was, come and do people and organization work for the world's largest advertiser. Wow, I thought at the time. It was the combination of two of the things that I found to love, build passion and skill sets for in both my academics and my involvement in school. Almost too good to be true. I scored the internship and never looked back. During the internship, I remember being intimidated because my cohort was made up of majority master's students with just 3 undergrads, including myself. And all coming from really prestigious schools like Cornell, Yale, Carnegie Mellon. I thought, how could I compete? Imposter syndrome was at an all-time high. But it was thanks to all the experiences that I received at UNI that I was able to step in and really demonstrate my capabilities early, oftentimes even beyond those coming from the well-accredited schools who didn't have the access to the level of involvement and engagement that I did here at UNI. I joined P&G full-time after graduation, moving to Cincinnati, Ohio, where honestly I never imagined I'd be. Coming from Iowa, I don't think anyone would ever say, I'm gonna end up in Cincinnati, Ohio, but did. And even worse than that, I actually lived in Kentucky, where I walked across the bridge every day to work. I'm not sure which one was worse. I've had a wealth of experience in just my short 6+ years with the company, living in 3 different states across 5 different assignments already, doing some really, really cool work and learning from amazing and inspiring people. I had really big responsibilities from day one. Oh, I want to make sure I'm on the right thing. Okay. I had really big responsibilities from day one, coaching senior leaders, driving organization design and culture transformation, leading merger and acquisition work. Who would have thought? I was a site HR leader for a chemicals plant at the age of 24. I had no idea what they were talking about 75% of the time, but we made it work. But being a sole HR leader responsible for an entire site of over 100 people doing really important work for our company was a significant milestone in my life. The opportunities were boundless. In my current role today, I serve as the HR director for our Gillette business's global research and development function, supporting innovation centers across 4 different regions, including countries like North America and the US, obviously, Germany, the UK, Beijing, and several others. I also lead diversity, equality, and inclusion for the enterprise of 11,000 people globally as well. With that, as the introductor said, I'm afforded the opportunity to lead how we drive representation in ways that are meaningful, that are immersing people in different cultures, of people that look different than them, that think different than them, that have different experiences, and that come from a variety of different backgrounds of life, while increasing representation, also creating an inclusive, equitable space where these people can thrive in and feel a sense of belonging. This job has afforded me the opportunity to travel the world, be recognized in ways I never thought possible, do some very random brand and modeling campaigns, and have my face in Walmarts and Amazons around the country, and leaving lasting impacts on people's lives, both within and outside of the walls of P&G. My personal experiences, convictions, and passions through college and so on molded and positioned me well to take leadership in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. I am truly walking in my purpose. How lucky am I? And I know the journey is still just beginning. So as I close, I don't think this is, the screen would have been black with some recommendations on it. But so as I close, I had a few tips to share, just to leave you all with as a piece of advice. Some being one, first and foremost, always be your authentic self first. It is critically important that you show up to a space as you are, because that helps you better perform at your peak, as your best self. Next, say yes. Be a yes man, not a no man. Don't be afraid to take the leap. Step into something that's different, that's uncomfortable, that challenges you in ways that you didn't think you could be challenged. Explore the world, have a lust for life. Ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It was important for me, and that's something I'm still working on myself. Enjoy the journey and enjoy the ride. It only gets better from here. So with that, I leave you with the utmost gratitude. It is because of the investment from many in this room that I am where I am today. Thank you to this university for opening the doors for me. Thank you to the students, past and present, faculty, staff, and administration for believing in me. Thank you to my friends and family for supporting me unconditionally. And thank you to my nominator, Jesse Heath, for amplifying me. I'm forever indebted, and I'm forever grateful. Go Cats.
Jamal, thank you for sharing your story and your advice. Now, I would like to invite Brian Gable, the Vice President of the Alumni Association, to the stage to share a few words.
Wow, so I'm just a small town Donaldson, Iowa kid too. When I first called Dylan to be on the alumni board, he had a Lee County, Fort Madison, Iowa phone number. I was like, Fort Madison, like from Donaldson. He grew up like a mile from my grandparents. A little bit age difference, but man, you talk about imposter syndrome. Like we have President Nook as an astronomer. And then these three amazing people, and I just like to tell people I'm like a recovering sponsorship sales guy. Like I'm trying to sell chicken sandwiches at a basketball game and the stuff that these guys have done. So awesome work. So yeah, what's exciting to be here, celebrating the accomplishments of truly remarkable members of our UNI family. Today, as we gather as Panthers, I'd like to share what it really means to be a part of this community and why these achievements of these three alumni embody the very best of what it means to be a graduate of UNI. Think about your own journey for a moment, right? I was a small town kid, first generation. We've all been in a lot of these same spots. But, you know, it was a place to come and learn and grow and figure out what we were capable of. And while we gained skills and knowledge, we also found something even more valuable, a sense of purpose, community to belong to, and a commitment to something larger than ourselves. That's UNI's legacy. I think we all think strongly about that. It's just not about degrees and diplomas. It's about the way we choose to live our lives and after we leave this campus, which you guys have all done so remarkable of. You guys have shown us what it means to live these values that UNI instills to all of us, the commitment to community, a drive to excel, and desire to make a positive difference in this world. You know, they all remind us that a UNI education is not just a foundation, it's a launch pad. And man, each of them have soared to incredible heights and makes us think about, man, what are we gonna do next? I know there's a lot of students in the room, but again, we've heard stories of perseverance, impact, purpose, and they've not only excelled individually, they've impacted lives, lifted up others, and continue to stay connected through UNI and the community that helped shape them. They show us that no matter where we go or what we do, the impact of UNI runs deep, shaping us through and shaping the world. We've celebrated more than their accomplishments. We're honoring their ongoing commitment to that Panther legacy, a legacy that values not just personal success, but the success of the communities around us. So Dylan, Tatiana, and Jamal, thank you for embodying what it means to be gold and bold, and remind us why being a part of this UNI family is something special. You've given us examples to look up and say, and standards to strive for. So thank you, congratulations, and all that you've achieved and all the ways you've helped UNI proud. Let's give them another huge round of applause. Congratulations again. And at this time, I'd like to invite all three of you to the stage, where Shelby Schrader, our Connecting Alumni to Students Advisor and Alumni Engagement Coordinator, will moderate our Q&A session.
Okay, so thank you everybody for coming today. It's been great to kind of meet these three throughout this process. I know Dylan and Jamal, our paths have kind of crossed before as we were students, and Tatiana, it's been great to get to know you the last couple of months as well. So throughout the session, we have had a great amount of questions turned in from the audience, so thank you to everybody that has participated in them. Some of them are for each of you individually. Some of them are for all three of you, so we'll kind of go round robin around it. So this is kind of a great question just to get started off with for all three of you. What was your favorite UNI experience? So maybe as a student or as you have come back as an alum, what has been one of your favorite experiences at UNI?
I think for me, one that I love to reminisce about is with the Glee Club. So I mentioned in my speech, I have tap dancing skills. Growing up, mom insisted on special skill sets beyond education. And so my sister was going to dance, so I went to dance as well, because she's driving down there, might as well just throw me in the car and go perform. So I did 14 years of tap dance experience. And so one of my favorite memories is my first year, freshman year, talked to Dr. Wiles, his first year on campus, and said, hey, I got this skill set, I would love to do it. And says, sure, we'll come up with something. And so first time sold out Gallagher Blue Dorn, doing a tap dance thing and getting a standing ovation for each 3 shows was just a phenomenal experience, something that I hold on personal to myself, and so I really enjoyed that. So with the Glee Club, that's always a memorable moment.
For me, it had to be touring President Nook and interviewing him. Now, there's so many, it's hard to choose. I would have to say, though, it would have been studying abroad, both I can't choose between my Shanghai experience with the College of Business and then my capstone program in Italy and Spain. I think before those, one happened in the spring of 2017 and one happened in the summer of 2017. Between those two, it's funny, like, I used to be very picky about certain foods. Like I wouldn't eat shrimp, avocado, mushroom, like there were so many things I didn't eat. And then you go to a place like China and you're like, I'm here in China and I'm gonna try anything because I just wanna be open. And I think it was from that experience that I just became much more open to, I use the analogy of food because that was the case. There's nothing I don't eat today. But it goes beyond food. It goes to becoming much more open to the world and the people and what is there to experience around me, my lust for travel in life. I think it all started at those experiences. So studying abroad and seeing the world and adventuring out there, I think that was huge for me.
There we go. Okay. For on-campus experience, I would definitely say UNI basketball was my favorite. So much fun to be able to attend those games, but actually I think I'll steal your answer as well. I also did a study abroad program in China, and I think that experience really helps shape your idea of what the world looks like. And so that was the first time I'd ever been to a non-Western country, and that really does change your perspective on a lot of things and how the rest of the world operates and how the rest of the world thinks about law and society, because like when you're raised here, you think about this is exactly how it is, this is how it should be, and then when you go to other places, you are exposed to different types of living and different societies, and it's a really cool experience to be able to really know that and contrast that with ours.
Awesome. Tatiana, this one was specifically for you. What piece of advice would you give a UNI student to protect their privacy, given how and where we use technology today?
Oh, no.
We all want to know.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. Okay, so fun fact, actually, Iowa is one of the few states that does have a data privacy law. So congratulations, you guys are all protected. Thank you for working in the Senate, passing that law. Yeah, it is tough because the U.S. is one of the only Western nations that actually doesn't have a federal data privacy law. So all these things are very state by state. So again, Iowa is one of the places where we do, but on an individual basis, really, oh man, there's so many ways to go about this. Thinking about deleting your data is just like a really good first step, especially like really sensitive ones. So if any of you all have used 23andMe, for example, delete that data immediately. I don't know if you all saw, but it was used in a cyber attack, especially against people of Jewish heritage. And so like things like that really do cause risks. Really starting with any kind of biometric data collection as well, kind of keeping an eye on that. When I'm using social media, they're all closed because something that, again, I don't like fear mongering, but I just want to make sure people are aware. Facial recognition companies often scrape social media profiles to be able to create profiles in order to sell that information to really whoever wants it. So making sure that your social media is closed and not accessible by outside parties.
Awesome. Thank you. Dylan, this one was for you. How do you keep your priorities straight, being so involved with UNI and having a full-time career? So maybe this is a time management advice for students as well.
Yeah. Seems like a therapy session right now. But yeah, my personality and growing up, that was always something that I was driven and motivated, and so I really keep myself busy. Being not busy is uncomfortable to me, and so being able to balance that was key. And so with that, it's routine, schedule, and priorities. But the biggest lesson I learned is when to let something go. Because I previously served on the Les Hale Endowment Fund Board, so that's a component of the UNI Glee Club. So at one time, I was potentially going to serve on 4 boards at UNI, and I had to say to myself, why? Why are you straining yourself this far? Where can your commitment go? And so from there, the Glee Club was one to where I was transitioning off. I had great experiences there, but there was new opportunities for me to engage in. And so I think the biggest advice that I can give you as students, when you want to be engaged, you want to build out your resume, you want to build your networks, but you also understand your balance and when to say no and let go. Because when you learn that stuff goes on without you, no matter how important you are or your contributions to those conversations, they're critical at that time, but there is opportunity for growth without your presence. And so that's one thing that I've learned throughout my time. Burnout is real. And so just personally do those reflections, level set your goals, and see where your priorities are going forward. And just do that continuously, and then you'll be able to have that balance that I'm still seeking myself.
Awesome. Jamal, this one is for you. Given your role at P&G, what would you recommend to UNI as an effective practice for ensuring an inclusive community?
Very, very loaded question. I mean, and I don't know how provocative I can get on this stage, but it can be challenging, obviously, with legislative restrictions, obviously, in Iowa that disable us a bit from doing certain things and driving certain programming and having the funding to enable a lot of the work that I was I had the pleasure and the privilege of being a part of when I was a student. But I think beyond that, funding, there's the money where your mouth is, and funding and all these things, of course, and you can do that. But beyond that, it's one, focusing on enrollment. So one of the questions I always ask, even from an alumni board standpoint, is what does enrollment look like, and are we bringing in a diverse set of students to immerse folks? Because I said this in my own conversation of, you learn most when you are around people who are different from you. You don't know a lot about the world if you can't immerse yourselves in different cultures, different experiences, different backgrounds. It becomes really challenging for you to grow and grow beyond your own perspectives and thoughts and ideations when you're surrounded by a bunch of people that look like you. So we can first really prioritize enrollment managing and ensuring we're hitting schools and places where we can recruit diverse talent. And I mean that in all facets and elements: majors, schools, multicultural, female, international, all facets. The other piece is, when getting here, assuring that our administration, faculty, and staff have the willingness, the ability, and the capability to support those students, to create a safe space, all with the sense of building a culture of belonging for people. It's important for everyone to feel a sense of belonging, regardless of where you come from. And if there's students on this campus that don't feel that way, it's really hard for them to perform in their academics. It's really hard for them to get involved. It's really hard for them to have a good time. And that's why you see things like people dropping out. That's why you see things like people flunking. That's why you see things like suicide rates and things like that going up. So it's really critical to create this sense of belonging and having that level of investment at all levels across the institution. Otherwise, you get in trouble.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge. This is kind of for everybody, or whoever wants to answer, but what was the best advice you received that helped get you where you are today?
Well, I think we've hinted at it, but it was definitely an encouragement throughout the university, especially in history department and political science, of just leaning into opportunities. It was one of those things to where if it wasn't planned out a structure for me, I didn't do it. That's because I wanted to know all the pros and cons. I weighed stuff out, and I really was encouraged to just go and just lean into those opportunities, and to what Tatiana and Jamal were talking about in their experiences. But I think that was really what critical to me and allowed me to be less of an introvert. I always say I'm an introvert working on my extrovertness, and so that's what really helped me out, is just lean into those opportunities and say yes to, I won't say everything because that could get you in trouble sometimes, but most things, just lean in and say yes. So I think that was a critical piece of advice I got.
Similar to Dylan, and I mentioned these in my talk. Number one, be a yes person, and by yes person, choicefully yes. As someone who is similarly someone who wants to do everything, I think it's even in my LinkedIn bio. I say, if I could do anything in this world, I'd do everything once, because again, the lust for life can become overcumbersome. So be a yes person, but do it choicefully, and always ask yourself the question, which I've started to in my career today, is, am I able to add meaningful value to this? And is it able to add meaningful value to me? Right? So it's really important to ask that question as you consider opportunities, as you consider experiences. I know I was somebody who just wanted to do things, and at a certain point I was just doing 1,000 things, but not 1,000 things well. It's better for you to do 5 things really well than 1,000 things subpar. So focus on the things where you know you can add meaningful, unique value, and the things that those things that will also contribute to you in the same way. It has to be that equal value proposition. And then the last thing, as I said in my talk, would be authenticity. I think we get into spaces, or we get into certain careers or organizations or classes where you see a variety of different people and you see a certain profile, whether it's extroversion or whatever it may be, and you think that you need to be that in order to be successful. You think you need to show up in this way in order to thrive in that space. And at the end of the day, you are your best self when you can show up as your best self, whatever that looks like to you. And I know many of you are probably on the journey of finding out what that looks like. I was on the journey for a long time, but bringing your best self and your authentic self to the places that you occupy is critical, because at that point you just perform better, you show up better, and you contribute at a higher bar.
Yeah, I'll actually build on that, and I talked about it a little bit in my speech, that being true to yourself and being able to be true to your different identities and not seeing them as flaws, but seeing them as strengths, And this was actually something Professor Peters helped me with, and I don't know if you even remember this at all, but I was applying for law schools and I was working on my cover letter, my personal statement, and I was writing it based on what I thought that they wanted to hear, you know, like what did I think that they were looking for in a candidate instead of who I was. And so Professor Peters really encouraged me to lean into all of these different identities that I had and how that actually made me unique and how that made me different from other people and why that was a strength for what was going to be happening in my legal career. And it actually ended up exactly working out that way.
Awesome. So Tatiana, kind of building off of that, a question that was asked for you with all of your different roles and identities, what ultimately led you to UNI?
This one's actually a pretty easy answer because I did track here, and so I was recruited to do track here.
Awesome. Perfect. Jamal, you said that you kept it a very good secret. You and I share this fun fact, but what was the reason that made you want to be TC?
I just wanted to do everything. No, I mean, and you probably saw it in some of the pictures, and my slides were a little disheveled, but I was always just a fan of the Cat and the Kitten. Like, I loved the equity they brought, the energy they brought to the games. And like I said, I was a huge Panther sports fan. I went to almost all the basketball games, football games, volleyball games, soccer, the ones that many people don't even go to. And I wanted to show my school spirit in another way, and almost in service too. It's funny because when I went to Interstate 35, despite my disconnection with the school, I was, you know, they do senior superlatives, and I was voted most school spirit as a part of the senior superlative, whichever. But I think that's just carried on in my equity of just like showing my spirit and showing that in a way that I was in service to the university while also celebrating our sports and other things that are happening around campus.
Awesome. Thank you. Dylan, what brought you the most enjoyment in your experience at UNI?
I think having the capacity to do what you want to pursue. I think that was really great for me at UNI because, like I said, at my college search process, I was looking to East Coast schools in the field of history, but then pivoting back to Iowa, I was debating between logistical engineering at Iowa State or history at UNI. And I was like, two juxtaposition of interests that I was looking at. But then I landed on history, and why I study history was based on my grandfather's service in World War II. So he passed away when I was in 6th grade, right when my curiosity bug was starting to blossom into understanding what service, the military service was. So I wasn't able to ask those questions of what was your service like? What did you experience from that firsthand source? And so that kind of led me into pursuing history and understanding how to tell stories, how to research and bring these past stories to life and understand the context around that. And so you and I had that structure to where they had a variety of courseworks in history. It had public history, which is museum and archival work, and how to really showcase history for public consumption. And so what really brought me the joy at UNI was having that flexibility and the support from professors to say, okay, go and do. You want to go do this, we will support you. If you want to go and have this experience, go forth. And so that led to me working with John Deere and building out the John Deere Tractor and Engine Museum in Waterloo. So as part of that original team, to start that process and build a corporate museum from scratch. And so that's a lasting impact that I have with UNI, and it led to the connections that UNI created, professors, associates, and so that is what's really brought me the most joy and why I stay connected to the university is because of the belief that they put in me that I didn't even understand myself. And so that's what I truly treasure that experience and why I am always going to be a Panther for life and never shy about UNI.
Awesome. Thank you. Jamal, you mentioned that you've moved, you've visited, and you've traveled to a lot of places. What do you recommend to others on adjusting to these life changes?
I would have first said that once you've done it so much, you just kind of get used to it. But and you'll probably feel that I've given the similar answer across many of these, but it's walking into spaces like eyes wide open. And I remember, fortunately, when I moved to Cincinnati, I at least interned in Cincinnati, so I had the experience of like in internships, they give you a cohort and you get really close, and then a select get offered back full time. So I came to Cincinnati knowing at least a cohort from my internship experience. But as I moved to, say, Boston, where I accepted a job in Boston before ever visiting Boston. Like, I had never been to Boston before I accepted the job. The first time I went to Boston was when I went to look for apartments, and then the next time was me moving there. And it comes from again, my interest in Lust for Life and trying things and experiencing new things and being very open. But not to say it wasn't hard or difficult either. Like, in a city like Boston, where everyone from there either like met themselves in academic settings or they are true Bostonians, it can be really difficult to meet people. So it was stepping out of my comfort zone even and being really intentional around networking events and finding organizations. It's similar to, it's less structured than college, obviously, and you're on a campus, but it's similar. There's organizations, there's institutions, there's things, there's clubs within the spaces that you live and exist in that you can get involved in, right? So it was about being super intentional around seeking those things out to find folks and build a community in those spaces so that I didn't feel alone. That adjustment became a little bit easier.
Awesome, thank you. Tatiana, did you always know that you wanted to follow the career path that you're in?
Absolutely not. So when I came to UNI originally, I had watched a lot of Law and Order, and I watched a lot of TV shows that involved people working in the FBI and people doing more science-based work in the field. So when I first came to UNI, I actually thought I would be working in a lab within the FBI. So I was a biochemistry and criminology major. And I quickly learned, or they told me, that you cannot do both because biochemistry is already a double major. And also I got to organic chem and I did not like it. So it's a little bit of a journey. Like, there is no way anybody really, I think, knows what they want to do when they're 18 years old. You kind of figure it out as you go, and you learn more and more about yourself and what you like and what makes you passionate. So I don't even think I really thought about being a lawyer until my junior year. And I was in a class, and I actually took a career aptitude test as part of this class. And at that point is kind of when my eyes became open, and I was like, oh, like, that's interesting. I wonder what that might look like. So I started doing some Googling around, and just like slowly, I think, really built up to it. And like, okay, yeah, law school is something I want to do. And then when I was at law school, again, I thought most of being a lawyer meant being a criminal lawyer. And who thought the world is so much bigger than that? So when I was at law school, I learned all of the different types of opportunities and jobs out there that go so much farther than what I had understood or known. And even when I was at law school, I think I had really wanted to focus on criminal law based on my criminology background. And then got my lowest grade in criminal law my first year and cried to my mom about it and didn't know what I was going to do with my life. But I ended up just like kind of continuing on with it and really trying to figure out what I enjoyed. I worked at DOJ, again, just trying to really emphasize and figure out, okay, do I like the constitutional aspect of criminal law? And I also didn't like that. And so, but when I was at DOJ, I learned for the first time that intersection between technology and law, and because we were dealing with a case regarding the Fourth Amendment, right, the right to search and seizure, regarding cell phone location data. And like, I just thought that was so interesting. And so that kind of started piquing my interest. And that obviously happened years and years later after I started at UNI. And then I worked at a firm where I started doing more data privacy work just because the firm needed it. And luckily really ended up liking it. So a little bit of a not linear journey, but I ended up figuring it out along the way. And I think I would encourage anybody sitting out here who doesn't know what they want to do or is thinking about a career change, like, it's all possible. You don't need to know where you're at, but you need to know who you are.
Awesome, thank you. This is another one for you, Tatiana. How do you feel about using AI in education? What advice would you give educators thinking about using AI in their classrooms?
Oh, this is such a tough question. I actually talked a lot with folks in the crim department today and sociology department because there's just so many different areas. And like, I'll be honest, again, like I said, I am a tech optimist. I use AI constantly. I am using ChatGPT constantly, but I'm using it as an additive to my work, right? I'm using it to refine my writing, refine my speeches, refine my work. And it's not replacing my work. It's not replacing my thoughts or my analysis or my ideas. And so finding that line, I think, in education can be hard right now when there are incentives to want to like cut corners a little bit, especially if you're underwater. I also think, especially in my work with policymakers, there's a really big concern about deepfakes and how deepfakes can be used, and that's like where basically you use an AI-generated image or voice clone to be able to imitate somebody, and it seems really hyper-realistic. And that's a huge issue in schools more than anywhere else. It's something like 90% of all deepfakes come from schools and school bullying and things like that, and those are really hard issues to try to deal with. And so I guess if I'm gonna provide, was the question providing advice or?
Yeah.
Providing advice about it was, one, just having broad awareness and education about what are these technologies, what are their capabilities, what are their risks, and then putting together some level of policies and governance that you use not only with your staff to understand, okay, this is how AI can be helpful to students, or helping them understand how AI can be additive to their work and additive to their studies, and how it shouldn't be used, and how even if you do use it, it actually is probably going to negate you in the long run. Yeah, and I'm also happy to talk to anybody about it as well if you need advice.
Awesome. There is a dessert reception afterwards too, so if you have any follow-up things that you want to ask them individually, I'm sure they'd be open to following up with any of their questions that you submitted. Dylan, this one was submitted for you. I'm sure that you have been presented with many different job opportunities, but how did you decide on the one that you are currently in?
Yeah, so my story, so I finished up graduate work in 16, and so that meant 6 years of straight academia. And my initial goal was to get my doctorate by 30. And so I was like, I'm paced, I'm ready to go. But then I was offered the campaign job. And so I was like, okay, that was that window of opportunity to where I finally took the opportunity to say yes, to just go experience campaign work. But I, at that time, did not know of these legislative analyst positions down at the state capitol. It never crossed my mind, never knew about it, wasn't aware of it. And so that wasn't on my radar when I took the campaign job. I was like, okay, I'll go do this, fill this kind of void in the spring, summer, fall of 16, and then reset myself in 17 and get back into the academic world. But then that led to another connection to where they said, we'd like to keep you around. Come join us in the Senate Majority Leader's office. We'll have a position for you. So they created me a position in the leader's office, stuck around for session, and then they said, well, Dylan, we want you to help us do our fundraising. So then they tapped my shoulder again, and I said, sure, we were 2 for 2, go third time, was successful there, and then that led to my legislative analyst role. So how I got to my position was through the network that I built up. And so my campaign job came through my connections of working on elections in 2012 and 2014 on campus as a volunteer. I made my connections with those individuals. They got promotions, and then they asked me to follow them along. And so I just hooked my wagon with them, and luckily it paid off. And so that's kind of where I landed my job, being able to build those connections. And that was the first job I actually had to put an application in since graduating, because the other jobs I held was, we want you, come, and we'll have it for you. And so that was the first time it was like, when I was applying, I was like, oh, here's another one. They're just going to tap my shoulder and I'll just come in. And they said, no, you need to submit a cover letter, resume, and 3 references. I'm like sitting here, I was like, what? And I was like, the other jobs are this easy, but did the process, went through a selection process that way and was able to get my position, and then received promotions within my current job.
Awesome, thank you. Jamal, for someone who wasn't there, could you give some insight into what it was like to be in McLeod Center, for the upset for UNC versus UNI?
I mean, I think the video or the picture gave a pretty good idea, but I mean, the crowd, it's unfortunate. I hope it gets better this year with the audience and student attendance and all those things. I encourage all students and staff and faculty to go and take advantage of the games. I mean, the turnout in the crowd was amazing. It was electric. The energy was incredible. The student section was very bought in, I think it was so funny being at a UNI game where people were, and I don't do things like this. First of all, I don't like lines, and I don't like the cold, but like waiting outside in the cold in the line for this game, there was energy leading up to it. People were super excited, and then the actual game was incredible. And then the turnout from obviously the players and the teams and upsetting a #1 team, you can only imagine. And then we of course stormed the court, despite probably not supposed to be doing that, but in a game like that, you're gonna do that. But I think it was just the energy, the electricity, the Panther pride and spirit, it really showed through.
Awesome. Whoever would like to go first can go first for this one, but it would be great if all three of you would answer. What has been your greatest accomplishment within your current role?
Okay. So AI is a big thing right now, obviously. And so in my role, we track and analyze all AI legislation across the entire United States on a federal and state level. So that's a lot. I don't sleep a lot. And I think there was something like 300 and 400 AI bills this past year that we tracked and analyzed. But I was able and really, really fortunate to be able to work with these really incredible state lawmakers, the Senate Majority Leader in Colorado, to be able to pass a law in Colorado that's one of the first comprehensive AI regulations in the US, really focusing on how AI systems are being developed ethically, the kind of data that they're using, making sure those systems are being tested before they're deployed, and making sure consumers are aware when AI is being used in manners that might affect them. So that certainly was a highlight of my entire career.
Thank you.
A lot of the actual HR stuff that I think has been most impactful, I can't really talk about. So I'll speak to the diversity, equity, and inclusion pieces. So similar to what I think institutions have been going through, companies have been going through similar things, right? There's been a lot of legal landscape legislation issues that have impacted companies like Busch Light and Harley Davidson and other companies that have been really impacted by DEI and have been sued. So a lot of large corporations such as P&G have been on this, how do we be, well, we haven't been directly attacked, but we've been on this, how do we be proactive about setting ourselves up and future-proofing us from this level of litigation. So I was one of the leaders that led the project for P&G on how do we rethink our evolution of equality and inclusion in the workplace to ensure that we were still being very intentional and concerted in our efforts around diversity, equity, and inclusion, both in hiring, recruiting, and also retaining diverse talent. But then also how do we evolve our language and our practices and our internal ecosystems to better adapt and be more inclusive. So things like, I think in 2015, P&G was on the journey of saying we're gonna scorecard, we're gonna measure how representation, whether it was African American, Black, Hispanic, Asian, White, Caucasian, woman representation in the workforce. We were very, very scorecard driven on leadership scorecards. You had to meet this metric by this period. And of course, when you put things on a scorecard in a business, it drives a certain level of behaviors of like, I need to meet these, so I'm gonna do things that I need to do to meet these, which were sometimes were like stewardship issues, right? But because we were so committed to this, we allowed it to kind of sweep under the rug to get at these goals. And now we're not able to do that because by doing some of those activities we did before, we were indirectly discriminating. So we would do things and say like, oh, I'm gonna design this job and it's gonna specifically be for we need to hire a female for this role, again, with the right intent of saying we need to progress female representation in the workplace. But what we were doing is we're ring fencing a job and discriminating against anybody else who was applicable for that job. So the work that I was doing was how do we take a step back and get back to our true intent on creating a place that is representative of the consumers we serve, while also still creating this place of belonging where everyone feels included, right? And we even seen in our survey scores, like because of a lot of the work that we were doing, white men were scoring lower on our survey scores of opportunities because they felt like everyone was advancing ahead of them. Now that has a level of different things to it, but it was creating the work to really drive broad-based inclusion and belonging across the enterprise and the ecosystem that I think it has just been super successful, and it's been really, really well received by leaders and has mitigated the risk on litigation for us as a company, which is huge.
Awesome, thank you. Dylan?
So my work product is legislative policy and bills. And so each one, from the significance to the very minutia of it, really has impact to all Iowans. And so with that, there are a couple that come to mind that I'm really proud of the work that I've helped our state senators develop the policy and fine tune it. One is redistricting. Every 10 years, we redraw our maps. And so I was tapped with doing the analysis of those districts, but then also understanding the legislative guardrails that we put in our place to protect ourselves from gerrymandering and swaying these districts to be more partisan than they should be. And so I was part of that research team to analyze all that census data and share that with our members to show where these maps are flawed in that guidance, but where they excel. And so that was all truncated due to COVID. We had to do that in a special session, and we had timelines that we had to get done, or it would be kicked out of our control. And so that was a really heightened moment, but I was really proud of the work to do on that policy and to see that through, since that's once in a decade. But the one that I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of it is our new behavioral health service system. So in Iowa, we had really siloed health policy programs. So we have 19 substance use districts and 13 mental health regions. We understand and know that substance use also has a connection to mental health and behavioral health concerns, but we've been treating them in separate. So if you come in with a substance use issue, we will treat you for your substance use, but now you have to exit that door and go to a mental health service to go get access for mental health. Not keep you in that door and saying, thank you for coming and asking for help, let's help you where you need to be helped. And so I'm really excited about this new behavioral health system that we're developing in the state, but it's always risky when the state takes over something. Each region likes their control. Each region is led by their county, and they feel they have that local input, which we are balancing at the state level. We're putting state resources into it. So I'm looking forward to seeing that policy and how that really truly plays out in the next 2 to 3 years. And hopefully we hit it right on the head, because we are in desperate need of these services in the state. We have federal dollars to utilize in the state without requiring more from taxpayers. And so I'm looking forward to seeing the results of the work that we've done so far, and hopefully have that true impact we believe it will on Iowans.
Awesome. So our last question, with connecting alumni to students being the official traditions keepers on campus for past, current, and future Panthers, what is your favorite UNI tradition?
Come on, TC, you can kick us off.
All right. I don't know, I guess like Campanile, like during homecoming, is the one that comes to mind immediately for me. Really fun to see everybody kind of come together under the Campanile, under this big tradition, and see everybody really celebrate UNI in that way.
I too was gonna say Campanile. Though I'm trying to think if I actually ever engage in Campaniling in the act itself, as much as just like people watch. I don't know. Was one of them, but I mean the other one still, like Panther sports, going to the activities, like that was always me, again, coming from a sports background in high school and being interested in sports, being able to engage actively in our sports was another big one for me.
I too may have to avoid the Campanile from the brick falling on my head, but I would say the Gallagher Blue Dorn is one of my favorite traditions. I always enjoyed how UNI has our student fees structured to where you're already investing in your student involvement on campus, to where we don't have to pay extra for athletic tickets. You have tickets available to you at the GB Pack for free shows. And so I really took advantage of that when I was on campus. So I was able to see the Blue Man Group, Pentatonics came in. There were some great speakers, great performances. And so that was a tradition I always did every year. utilize those tickets and be able to see great shows on campus as a student without additional cost to myself. And so that's a fun tradition to keep and uphold.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you to everybody for such engaging questions and for being with us here this afternoon to celebrate these 3 outstanding Panthers. Thank you to Connecting Alumni to Students, the UNI Alumni Association staff, the Golden Bold Selection Committee, and the Mocker Union Event Services staff for making this event possible. And finally, thank you, Dylan, Tatiana, and Jamal for leading the way, inspiring future Panther leaders, and making everyone at UNI so proud. You embody the university's commitment to excellence, innovation, and service. You are role models for Panthers of all generations, and it truly has been an honor to host you today. Congratulations on this recognition. For our campus guests in the room, thank you for the work that you do to support and inspire Panthers to pursue their dreams and serve their communities in such diverse ways. The Gold and Bold Award nomination will open again in the late spring. We look forward to honoring another class of Gold and Bold alumni next fall. These 3 have set the bar very high. We hope you can stay and enjoy a dessert reception in the ballroom right behind you while mingling and conversing with our award recipients. Thank you, and go Panthers.